Hello, 7th graders. We have arrived at the last lesson in Chapter 4, the quickest chapter in the book, 4 sections. Today, it's all about simple interest. So this is really going to help you out when you need to borrow money or save money. And I'm sure quite a few of you already have savings accounts. So this will give you kind of a little clue into how things work at the bank. And by the way, working at a bank, being a bank executive, isn't a bad way to go as far as future career choices are listed for you. So think about that. If this section's interesting to you, that might be an avenue you want to take later. Okay, simple interest. It's got to be easy because it has the word simple in it, right? I should just write simple after every single, or before every single topic we cover. That would be nice. Okay, what is interest? Interest is money paid or earned for the use of money. When you put your money into your bank account, they actually take your money and they invest it so that they can make more money. That's how banks make money. They use your money to make their own money. And usually they're low risk. It's not like they're going to run out or anything like that. They invest a small number and they're very cautious about it depending on how risky you want to be. We'll get more into that in class. I'm sure everybody likes to talk about this a lot. So interest is money paid or earned for the use of money. It can be paid if you're taking out a loan. You can earn it if they're using your money to make money. What is the principal? This isn't the Mr. Lavender one. This is the amount of money that you either borrow or deposit. It's kind of like your starting amount. Let's say you start a bank account, you put $500 in. That's your principal. That's your starting amount. Let's say you go to the bank and you borrow $1,000. That would be the principal, the total amount that you borrowed. So starting amount. Look at it that way. Simple interest is money paid or earned only on the principal. So interest is money paid or earned for the use of money, but simple interest is the money paid or earned just on what you're either borrowing to start or what you're depositing to start. Deposit means put money in. And yes, one more formula. You learned A equals P times W formula. Now, the new formula that we have for simple interest is I equals PRT. I like to say I equals partay. That's one way to remember it, or not. You're probably rolling your eyes just like you would in class, but then when you're trying to remember it, you will come back to this moment and you'll say, oh yeah, I equals party. Yep, so I'm willing to make a fool out of myself just for you. Alright, so just like when you had A equals P times W, you had to learn how to solve for A, for P, and for W. Again, we need to learn how to solve for each of these things. So you first need to know what each one represents. This capital I here, that represents simple interest. Again, the amount of interest earned on the principal, or paid only on the principal amount. Capital P, that's the principal. It's not like the lowercase p that represented the percent. A different value represents percent this time. We'll see in a second. So capital P means principal. What's the starting amount? What's the amount of money that you started the account with? Or what's the amount of money that you're borrowing? This R right here, that's the annual interest rate. And rates, annual interest rates are going to be given as a percent. So this time when you locate the percent in your little math story, that's going to be R, not P. And again, whenever you're given a percent, in order to plug it into an equation, we have to divide it by 100. Same thing here. Whenever you're given R, divide it by 100 before you plug it in. And last T stands for the amount of time. So how long is it going to take you to pay off your loan? Or how many years or months, could be, I guess. How long are you going to leave your money in the bank? All right, because that's how you can earn. So you pay interest when you borrow, you earn interest when you deposit. And this T in the equation is always going to be in years. If you're given the amount in months instead, then you have to figure out the equivalence in years. And usually it's as simple as dividing by 12. Do you know why 12? Because there are 12 months in a year. Yes. So if it's given in months, you can't use that amount. You have to convert it into years. So we're going to do what we did before in A equals P times W, and I'll kind of break it out and you'll solve for each one. The first thing I want you to know how to solve for is the interest earned I. Alright, so finding interest earned, or the capital I. You put $500 into a savings account. The account earns 3% simple interest per year. two things you have to answer. One, what is the interest after 3 years? And two, what's the balance after 3 years? All right, and you're going to find these are kind of similar to some problems that we've done. It's just a different scenario here. So you do need to figure out what's what. It says you put $500 into a savings account. That sounds like the amount of money you're starting with, right? The amount of money that you start with is principal. So I'm going to put capital P above this 500 because that's what it is. The account earns 3% simple interest per year. Remember that annual interest rate is your R, and we're supposed to divide it by 100 before we plug it in. Now I'm not given anything else. I need to know at least one other thing before I can solve, because only one variable can be missing for you at this stage in the game. Next year you'll have two. What is the interest rate after 3 years? Well, 3 years, that would be our time. So we have P, we have R, we have T. What's missing? Yes, the I. So just like before, I'm going to rewrite my formula. I equals P, R, T, partay. Every time I'm going to say it. Every time. Yep. And remember, when letters are right next to each other like that, it does mean multiplication. I'm just going to drop the dot. Okay, so we're solving for I, we don't know. P is 500. I'm supposed to multiply that by the rate as a decimal. So when you take 3 divided by 100, we'll get 0.03. And then we're supposed to multiply that by the time. And in this case, the time is 3 years. No converting, it's already given in years. I is already isolated. I love when this happens. So all you need to do is take 500 times 300 times 3, and we get 45. So the interest that you would earn after 3 years of leaving your $500 in the account is $45. That means as long as you don't touch that money, you get $45 just for keeping it in the bank. It's nice. The bank earns more than that, just to let you know, but it's still nice. Now I ask you, what's your account balance after 3 years? Well, you started off with $500, right? And you earned 45. So that means you would have the 500 you started with plus $45 in your simple interest. So after 3 years, instead of $500, you would have $545 just for keeping your money there. That's nice. All right, let's try one more. And feel free to pause and try this one on your own. It's going to be just like the previous one. Welcome back. You put $200 into a savings account, so that's my principal. It earns 2% simple interest, so that's our interest rate. I'm going to divide that by 100. Whenever you're given a percent to plug in, divide it by 100. What's the interest rate after 5 years? That's my time. So the interest is equal to the principal multiplied by the rate as a decimal, not 0.2, it's 0.02, 2/100. That's what that says. And multiply that by 5. So our interest is going to be 200, that's the P, times 0.02, or 2/100, that's the R, times 5, that's the time, and the result is 20. That means $20. That's how much you earn after 5 years. So your account balance is going to be the 200 that you started with, plus the $20 you earned in interest, for a grand total of $220. So after 5 years, if you have a 2% interest rate, you're going to end up with $220. You can kind of see that the higher the interest rate, the more money you can earn. And the more money you start with, the more money you can earn. Hopefully those are some nice correlations that you're noticing. All right, now this time we are going to figure out how to solve for the R. So this time we're looking for the interest rate. And remember, that rate is a percent. So these are tricky because you have to remember, oh yeah, I want it to be a percent at the end, so that means I have to multiply by 100. Very, very similar to solving for P. Okay, you put $1,000 in an account. That's what you start with, right? That's your principal. The account earns $100 simple interest. Now this doesn't say simple interest rate, and it doesn't have a percent sign after it. It says $100 simple interest. Remember, the I represents your simple interest. And it earns this in 4 years. Whenever it says years or months or whatever after, that means it's the time. What is the annual interest rate? The annual interest rate is R. That's what we're looking for. So in the equation, I equals PRT. This time we're given I. I is 100. We're given the principal. It's 1,000. we are not given r. So I'm going to put a multiplication sign and write my r. And then I'm supposed to multiply that by the time. So I'm going to put a multiplication sign. It says 4 years. Now this looks a little bit different than what you're used to as far as equations go. But remember before when you had more than one thing going on, you were allowed to combine like terms? This is similar to it. They're not being added, so you're not really combining like terms. But if you were to take 1,000 times r times 4, when you're multiplying, the order you multiply doesn't matter. So I could take this 1,000 and multiply it by the 4, which is 4,000, and I still have times r equals 100. So all I did was I multiplied the numbers. I don't know what r is, but I know what 1,000 times 4 is. It's 4,000, and I'm supposed to multiply that by r. Do you recognize this now? Yes, it's just a one-step multiplication equation. So to solve for r, we're going to divide each side by 4,000. That gets the r isolated. So 100 divided by 4,000, maybe you're just crossing out zeros and, oh yeah, okay, I remember this. It's, okay, 0.025. That's not a percent yet. It's not a percent because when we used r in here, it had been divided by 100. I know it's a variable, but it's a variable that was divided by 100. To get the percent out, I need to multiply that by 100. So the rate is actually 2.5%. That's the only one where you have to multiply by 100 at the end. Whenever you're trying to solve for a percent, you have to multiply by 100. Just like when you're trying to convert your quiz scores. You do top divided by bottom and multiply by 100 to make it a percent, because it's always out of 100%. Okay, one more of these kind, and then we'll move on to more. I know there's more today. You put $700 into account. That's your principal. The account earns $224 in simple interest. That's I. In 8 years. That's your time. What's the annual interest rate? That means we don't know R. So I equals parte. I equals PRT. I said every time. I meant it. Yep. So the I, we had 224. The principal we said was 700. We said R we don't know. And the time was 8 years. Remember, before you start this, you need to multiply what you do know. So 700 times 8, I know 8 times 7 is 56, and I just need to add 2 zeros, and I still have my R. Now we're just at a little one step. To get rid of a number, to get rid of multiplying by 5,600, we're going to divide by 5,600. So R ends up equaling 224 divided by 5,600. That gives us 4/100. That's the percent as a decimal. To write it as a percent, we need to multiply it by 100. So R is actually equal to 4%. And do put the percent sign after it so we know that it's a percent. We worked hard to change it into a percent. Multiplying by 100 is so tough, I know. All right, keep going, turn your page. I'll move my paper. Now we need to solve for the amount of time here. Okay, so we want to know how long is it going to take for me to earn this. It says a bank offers a 2% interest rate, okay? So that's our rate. Remember, we have to divide by 100 before we can start. Okay, so it looks like I got a little typo here. I'll fix it before you get yours. It says with a principal of $800. So principal, 800, that means 800 is paid. You want to know how long it's going to take to earn $100 interest. So that 100 would be your simple interest. So this time, we don't have the time. We're looking for time. Aren't we always looking for time? Nobody has the time anymore. So in I equals parte, it says that our interest was 100, our principal was 800, our rate is 2%. That means take 2 divided by 100. And I'm supposed to multiply that by the time. This is very similar to what we just did, except this time instead of the 800 and that end one being multiplied together, I get to multiply those two together first. So 100 equals, take 800 times 200. It's 16. And then times t. So all we need to do to find t is do the opposite of multiply by 16, which is divide by 16. So t equals, when you take 100 and you divide it by 16, you end up getting 6.25. You don't need to multiply anything by 100 because this is just an amount of time. So it takes 6.25 or 6 1/4 years. That's how long it would take you to earn your $100. Let's try another one of those. A bank offers 1.5% interest rate. That's our R. I'm going to write divided by 100 underneath it so I don't forget to do that. How long does it take an account with a principal of $400 to earn $36 interest? Once you can label these pieces, it makes the rest a piece of cake. And who doesn't like a piece of cake? I know. So I equals PRT. The I, the interest given in the problem, is 36. The principal given in the problem is 400. Your rate is given as 1.5%. Take 1.5 divided by 100, and you're actually plugging in 15 thousandths. And we're supposed to multiply that by the time. We don't know the time, so leave it alone. Before we begin solving this, you need to multiply the numbers together that you're given. So we have 400 times 15 thousandths. That results in 6. So this is really the equation that we're solving. In order to undo multiplying by 6, we divide by 6, and time is equal to 6 years. So it would take you 6 years to earn $36 at an account with $400 in it. I mean, it's money that you get for doing nothing, so that's nice, but 6 years, it's a long time. So usually when people make investments, they try to invest as much as they can. All right, finally, this is probably going to be very important to you someday. Loans. Usually people need them when you want to go and buy a house. Most people don't just have hundreds of thousands of dollars lying around, so they have to take out something called a mortgage. And you end up paying more for your house than you purchased it for, but you end up having the item that you want. The American dream, I know. Okay, so we want to figure out how much a loan is going to cost us, so you can kind of shop around because different banks have different rates. And you always want to find out who has the lowest rate on the loan so that you're paying less for it. So some of you have done this, maybe not yourselves, but your parents or guardians have done this. You decide, I am going to take up playing an instrument, and you have to buy the instrument, right? Well, most people don't have $600 laying around. I know I sure don't. So if I wanted to purchase a violin, which I did back in 5th grade, that was my instrument of choice, we had to borrow $600. The simple interest rate is 15%. You pay off the loan after 5 years. What was the total cost of the loan, including the money borrowed? Okay, we're given a lot of information here. I want to know the total cost of the loan, including the amount borrowed. What are they asking us for here? Well, why don't we try identifying I, P, R, and T and see if we can figure it out. It says you borrow $600. So the amount that you borrow is actually your starting amount, your principal, right? Principal can either be the amount you borrow or the amount that you deposit. The simple interest rate is 15%. That must be R because it's a percent, yep. And I'm going to divide it by 100 underneath it. You pay the loan off after 5 years. That's my time. What was the total cost of the loan, including the amount borrowed? Well, it seems to me the only thing I'm missing right now is I, right? And if you figured out how much interest you had to pay, you could figure out how much total you borrowed just by adding it to 600. So let's do that. I equals PRT. We don't know I. We know that P is 600. We know our rate is 15 divided by 100, and the time is 5. So interest would be 600 times 1500 times 5. That means the interest paid for borrowing $600 is $450. When I ask you the total cost of the loan, including the amount borrowed, that means I need to take the amount borrowed, add $450 to that, and then I get my total cost, which would actually cost me $1,050 for this violin instead. So that's why it's great if you did have $600 lying around, because then you wouldn't have to pay an extra $450 to borrow money from a bank over that amount of time. It's spread out over the number of years you borrow it for, so it's not like you have to pay that up front, but that violin ends up costing you more than what you borrowed for it. That's kind of the danger in credit cards, guys. You can borrow the money and then they'll charge you every single month, whatever balance you have to pay them a percentage of it. So you end up paying way more for the items that you purchase than what you think. All right. And who says, when are we ever going to use this stuff in this chapter? Nobody. You'll use this stuff all the time. All right. You borrow $300 to buy a guitar. Apparently it's music day for me here. I do enjoy music, as you know. So you borrow $300 to buy a guitar. The simple interest rate's 12%. You pay the loan off after 4 years. How much do you pay for the loan? Okay, well, you borrow $300. I know that's the principal. The interest rate is 12%, so that's my R. I'm going to write divided by 100 underneath it. You pay the loan off after 4 years, so that's my time. How much do we pay for the loan? Well, first we need to know how much interest. So let's calculate it. I equals parte. I know, I said every time, and I mean it. I keep my promises. So, principal 300. The rate's 12% divided by 100. The time is 4 years. So, the amount of interest you'll pay on this guitar is 300 times 1200 times 4. You're going to pay $144 in interest. The question wasn't how much do you pay in interest, it's how much do you pay for the loan. So for the total loan, you're going to pay your $300 back plus $144 in interest. So that guitar ends up costing you, instead of $300, it ends up costing you $444 for that guitar. So yes, you get your guitar immediately and you get to play it, and that's awesome, but you end up paying $144 more because you didn't save up for it. So moral of the story, save up for items whenever you can. It is better to have it than to borrow from somebody else. Or maybe save up enough so you can be the lender and you can make $144 for doing nothing. See you tomorrow.